The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of a modest two-bedroom apartment on the edge of a bustling city. 11-year-old Malik Johnson, seated at the dining table, clutched his well-worn crayon as he finished coloring a picture of a superhero wearing a cape and braces on their legs. Malik, born with cerebral palsy, had a disarming smile that could light up a room. His hazel eyes sparkled with a mix of determination and innocence, framed by the unruly curls that his dad, Darnell, called his lion's mane. Despite his condition, which caused muscle stiffness and required him to use a walker, Malik's spirit was as vibrant as the bright colors in his drawings. He loved superheroes, science experiments, and making up jokes that only he found funny. His disability didn't define him. His boundless imagination and fierce determination did. But underneath his sunny demeanor, there was a flicker of insecurity. He often wondered why some kids at school avoided him or whispered when he passed. At the heart of Malik's world was his father, Darnell. A towering man in his late 30s, Darnell had a quiet strength and a booming laugh that could be heard down the block. Once a high school football star, life had taken unexpected turns, but he embraced every challenge with resilience. Darnell worked as a mechanic, his grease-streaked hands a testament to long hours spent fixing cars to make ends meet. Despite their financial struggles, he ensured Malik never felt deprived of love or support. The Johnsons' daily routine was as consistent as clockwork. Each morning, Darnell would carefully help Malik into his specially designed braces before they walked together to the nearby school. Malik adored his father's morning pep talks. "All right, champ," Darnell would say, kneeling to adjust the straps on Malik's walker. "What's the goal today?" "Be brave, be kind, and keep trying," Malik would respond, grinning ear to ear. At school, Malik faced both triumphs and challenges. His teachers appreciated his curiosity and clever wit, but navigating the bustling hallways with his walker often left him feeling like an outsider. Some of his classmates were kind, like Sophia, who always saved him a seat at lunch. But others were not. Malik tried to shrug off their stares and snickers, yet the sting lingered. After school, their apartment transformed into a fortress of creativity and laughter. Darnell had a knack for turning the simplest moments into adventures. On weekends, they worked on DIY science projects or watched old superhero movies, dreaming up their own characters. Darnell's unwavering belief in Malik's potential was evident in every word he spoke. "You don't need to be like anyone else, Malik. You're already a hero," he often said, ruffling Malik's curls. Their neighborhood was a tapestry of contrasts. The Johnsons lived on the corner of Maple Street, a working-class area where families looked out for each other. Children played basketball in the alleys, and the smell of grilled hot dogs wafted from Mr. Rivera's food cart. But just a few blocks away, towering mansions and manicured lawns signaled a world far removed from their own. The divide was palpable, especially for Malik, who attended a school where the wealthier kids often flaunted their gadgets and expensive sneakers. Darnell worked tirelessly to shield Malik from feeling inferior, but Malik's sharp mind sometimes noticed more than he let on. One day, Malik pointed to a group of kids on the playground, their laughter echoing across the yard. "Dad, why don't they play with me?" he asked softly. Darnell paused, searching for the right words. "Sometimes people don't understand what makes someone special," he said, crouching to meet Malik's gaze. "But that doesn't mean you stop shining." Though their bond was strong, subtle hints of tension began to surface. Malik had become quieter during dinner, his jokes less frequent. Darnell noticed the way his son's shoulders slumped when recounting certain school days. It was clear something was weighing on Malik, but he hadn't yet found the courage to share it. As Darnell watched Malik draw another superhero with a determined expression, he felt a pang of worry. He knew that the world outside their home wasn't always kind. He wondered if he'd done enough to prepare Malik for the battles he'd face, not just with his disability, but with a society that didn't always see his worth. Little did they know, a storm was brewing just around the corner, one that would test their resilience and redefine their bond. The air buzzed with chatter and laughter as the lunch bell rang at Maple Ridge Elementary. Malik maneuvered his walker down the bustling hallway, heading toward the cafeteria. He was excited to show Sophia his new drawing of a superhero in a bright yellow cape. As he reached the double doors, 3 boys from the older grades stood in his path. "Hey, Wheels," one of them sneered, smirking as he blocked Malik's way. It was Jake, a lanky kid with a permanent scowl, flanked by his cronies, Ethan and Ryan. Malik froze, gripping the handles of his walker tightly. "Excuse me," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the noise. Jake's grin widened as he leaned in closer. "What's the rush? Got somewhere important to be," he mocked, snatching the folded paper from Malik's hand. "Hey, give it back," Malik said, his voice trembling. Ethan unfolded the drawing and burst into laughter. "What is this supposed to be? A superhero with robot legs?" He jeered, holding it up for the others to see. Ryan added, "Looks more like a broken action figure." The boys laughed louder, drawing the attention of nearby students. Malik's cheeks burned as he tried to snatch the paper back, but Jake shoved his walker slightly, causing him to stumble. He didn't fall, but the humiliation was enough to bring tears to his eyes. "Stop it," Malik said, his voice cracking. Before he could say anything more, a teacher's voice cut through the air. "What's going on here?" Mrs. Thompson strode over, her sharp gaze scanning the scene. "Nothing. We were just joking," Jake said smoothly, handing the crumpled drawing back to Malik. Mrs. Thompson frowned, but didn't press further. "Lunch is starting. Move along, all of you." Malik made his way to a table in the corner, his hands shaking as he smoothed out the wrinkled drawing. Sophia sat down beside him, her expression full of concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Malik nodded quickly, though his eyes brimmed with unshed tears. "I'm fine," he muttered, focusing on his food tray. But he wasn't fine. For the rest of the day, Malik stayed quiet, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The joy he usually felt in art class was replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. By the time he walked out of school, his steps were heavier, his head bowed. That evening, Darnell immediately noticed something was wrong. Malik barely touched his dinner and didn't crack a single joke during their meal. "You okay, champ?" Darnell asked, his voice filled with concern. Malik hesitated, staring at his plate. Finally, he mumbled, "Some kids made fun of me today." Darnell's jaw tightened. "What happened?" "They took my drawing and said mean things," Malik said, his voice wavering. "They called me names and laughed at me." Darnell's chest tightened with a mix of anger and heartbreak. He crouched next to Malik, placing a firm but gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Listen to me, Malik. What they did was wrong. It has nothing to do with who you are or how incredible you are." "Okay." Malik nodded, but the doubt in his eyes was unmistakable. The incident began to cast a shadow over their routine. Malik, who once loved mornings, now dragged his feet, dreading school. His jokes and bright chatter during their walks grew scarce. Even his passion for drawing seemed dimmed. The sketchbook that was usually filled with new creations sat untouched on the dining table. Darnell, deeply troubled, tried to offer support. He spoke to the school principal, emphasizing the need to address bullying. But the response was lukewarm, a promise to keep an eye on things. Unsatisfied, Darnell decided to take matters into his own hands, observing, planning, and waiting for the right moment to ensure Malik never faced such cruelty again. The storm had started, and Darnell was ready to fight back, not with fists, but with a lesson that no one would forget. The bullying didn't stop, it got worse. A week after the first incident, Jake and his friends found Malik sitting alone on the playground bench during recess. This time, they didn't just taunt him, they pushed his walker just out of reach, forcing him to crawl painfully across the rough asphalt to retrieve it. The teachers on duty were too far away to notice, and most of the kids around either ignored what was happening or pretended not to see. Malik's confidence continued to unravel. The once bright child who proudly answered questions in class now avoided raising his hand. His laughter, which used to fill their apartment, grew rare, replaced by long silences as he stared out of the window. One afternoon, Darnell picked Malik up from school to find him sitting alone on the curb, his eyes red from crying. It took some coaxing, but Malik finally told him about the latest bullying incident. Darnell's hands clenched into fists as he listened, his heart aching with each word. "That's it," Darnell said, his voice tight with anger. This can't go on. The next day, Darnell arranged a meeting with the school principal, Mrs. Grant, and Malik's teacher, Mrs. Thompson. Malik sat quietly beside his father in the small office, clutching his backpack like a shield. Bullying is unacceptable, Darnell said firmly. My son has the right to feel safe at school. Mrs. Grant nodded sympathetically, but hesitated. We'll look into it, Mr. Johnson. However, these situations can be tricky. With all due respect, Darnell interrupted, his voice rising slightly. There's nothing tricky about protecting a child from being tormented. Mrs. Thompson added, Malik is a bright and well-behaved student. It's heartbreaking to hear this is happening. I'll keep an eye on him and try to mediate. Darnell left the meeting feeling frustrated. Words and promises wouldn't stop the bullying, and he knew it. He resolved to dig deeper and take matters into his own hands, but first he needed to be there for Malik. At home, Darnell tried to rekindle Malik's spark. He brought out their favorite superhero movies, suggesting they create a new character together. Malik smiled faintly, but didn't pick up his sketchbook. Even Sophia, who visited one weekend to play board games, noticed the change. Malik, she said softly as they played, you don't have to listen to those boys. They're just mean because they don't understand. But what if they're right? Malik muttered, barely audible. Sophia frowned. They're not. You're awesome. And they're just bullies. Darnell overheard the conversation and felt a pang of helplessness. His son, his bright, resilient boy, was beginning to believe the lies. Malik's inner struggle deepened. He stared at himself in the mirror one night, his eyes welling with tears as he examined the braces on his legs. Why can't I just be normal? He whispered to his reflection. At school, he dreaded recess and the long hallways where Jake and his friends seemed to appear out of nowhere. The once lively boy began walking with his head down, avoiding eye contact and staying close to teachers whenever he could. In his heart, Malik longed for acceptance. He wanted to be seen as more than the boy with the walker. He wished for the courage to stand up to his bullies, but the fear of their laughter and the sting of their words held him back. Meanwhile, Darnell's frustration grew. He spent nights researching anti-bullying resources and stories of resilience, looking for inspiration. He spoke to neighbors and friends, including Mrs. Rivera, whose son Carlos had also faced bullying years ago. Carlos found his strength when we stood up for him as a family, Mrs. Rivera said. The bullies don't just need to be stopped. They need to learn a lesson they'll never forget. Darnell nodded, the wheels in his mind turning. He knew that confronting the bullies head-on wouldn't just be about protecting Malik. It would be about teaching them a lesson in empathy and accountability. The turning point came when Malik came home one afternoon with a torn shirt and bruised knees. He had fallen after Jake's friends had shoved him while mocking his walker. This time, Malik didn't cry. He simply looked at his father with tired eyes and said, I don't want to go back there. Darnell knelt before Malik, gripping his shoulders gently. Malik, I know it's hard, but you're stronger than you think. And I promise you, I won't let this go on any longer. That night, Darnell started putting his plan into action. He reached out to the parents of other kids who had faced similar issues, organizing a meeting at their apartment. Together, they shared stories and brainstormed ways to hold the school accountable and confront the bullying culture. Darnell also began preparing something special for Malik, a way to show him that his disability was not a weakness, but a source of unique strength. It was time to remind his son and everyone else of the power of resilience. The pieces were falling into place. Darnell's determination burned brighter than ever, and the confrontation that would change everything was on the horizon. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when the community gathered in the school auditorium. Word had spread quickly. Darnell Johnson had requested a meeting with the school's administration, parents, and students to address the growing problem of bullying. The turnout was larger than anyone anticipated. Teachers, parents, and even students filled the seats, whispering curiously about what Darnell planned to say. Darnell stood tall on the stage, his presence commanding yet calm. Malik sat in the front row, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. Jake, Ethan, and Ryan were seated off to the side with their parents, arms crossed and expressions defiant. Thank you all for coming, Darnell began, his deep voice carrying through the room. "I'm here today as a father who has watched his son, Malik, face something no child should ever endure." He paused, looking directly at the bullies and their families. Bullying doesn't just hurt the one being targeted. It hurts our entire community. The room grew silent. Darnell turned to a large easel behind him, where he had pinned one of Malik's drawings. It was the superhero with braces on their legs, standing proudly with a glowing cape. "This is Malik's hero," Darnell said, his voice steady. "This hero isn't defined by their struggles, but by their strength. My son draws heroes because he sees the best in people, even when they don't see it in him." He stepped closer to the bullies and their families. "But last week, this drawing was crumpled and mocked. My son was pushed, humiliated, and made to feel small. And for what? Because he's different?" Jake's father, a burly man in a business suit, stood up abruptly. "Look, kids will be kids. They didn't mean any real harm." Darnell's eyes narrowed. "Kids will be kids when they don't know better. But as adults, it's our job to teach them. Ignoring this behavior doesn't excuse it. It enables it." Then came the twist. Darnell took a deep breath, looking out at the crowd. "You see, I know what it feels like to be bullied. When I was Malik's age, I faced the same taunts, the same stares. But unlike Malik, I didn't have anyone to stand up for me. And the anger I carried led me down a dark path." The audience leaned in, curious. "I made mistakes. I got into trouble, serious trouble," Darnell admitted, his voice softening. "But I turned my life around because someone believed in me. They taught me that my past didn't define me. And now, I'm here to make sure my son, and every child in this school, knows that they're worth fighting for." Gasps rippled through the room as Darnell revealed the truth. He had once been the kid everyone underestimated, the one who let anger consume him until he found the strength to change. "Jake, Ethan, Ryan," Darnell said, addressing the bullies directly, "I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to challenge you. What kind of people do you want to grow up to be? The ones who tear others down? Or the ones who lift them up?" The emotional weight of Darnell's words hit everyone differently. Malik, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly stood up. His voice trembled but was firm. "I don't hate you," he said, looking at the bullies. "I just want you to stop. I just want to be your friend." The room fell silent. Jake shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his father, who looked away. Ethan stared at the floor, while Ryan's mother wiped her eyes. Darnell crouched beside Malik, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "That's what makes you stronger than any bully, Malik. Your heart." The transformation began right then and there. Jake's mother, visibly moved, stood up. "We're sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "We had no idea it had gone this far." She nudged Jake, who looked reluctant but finally muttered, "I'm sorry, Malik." Ethan and Ryan followed suit, their apologies sincere yet awkward. For the first time, they saw the person behind the walker. Not a target, but a boy who just wanted to belong. Parents around the room nodded in agreement as Darnell finished his speech. "It's not enough to punish bullies. We have to teach them. Teach them compassion, empathy, and accountability. And that starts with us, the adults." Malik's confidence began to rebuild after that day. The school implemented a zero-tolerance policy for bullying, coupled with workshops on empathy and kindness. Jake, Ethan, and Ryan were required to participate, and over time, their attitudes softened. For Darnell, the incident became a turning point not only for his son, but for the entire community. Malik returned to his art, proudly drawing superheroes who were as unique and resilient as he was. One of his drawings even made it into the school's art exhibit, earning him applause and admiration. Malik's journey wasn't over, but he was no longer alone. He had his father, his friends, and now a school that stood behind him. The confrontation marked a turning point for the entire community, but it was only the beginning of healing. Darnell, true to his word, didn't let the moment fade into a fleeting victory. He partnered with the school to create a program aimed at fostering empathy and understanding among students and parents. The initiative, called Heroes in All of Us, included workshops where kids could share their stories, learn about each other's struggles, and build connections. Darnell took an active role, often speaking to classrooms about resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. Malik joined him occasionally, shy at first but gradually gaining confidence. He showed his superhero drawings and talked about what made them strong. Not superpowers, but their courage and kindness. The Bullies, too, were part of the program. Jake, Ethan, and Ryan initially resisted, but over time, they began to see Malik in a different light. One day, Jake approached Malik during recess. "Your drawings are pretty cool," he said, awkward but sincere. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Malik's self-esteem blossomed as the weeks went on. He began raising his hand in class again, answering questions with the same enthusiasm he once had. At recess, he joined a group of kids who played board games, and soon, his laughter returned. One of the most heartwarming changes came during an art contest hosted by the school. Malik's drawing of his superhero was displayed front and center, earning him a ribbon for creativity. Jake and Ethan, who had mocked him before, were now the first to clap when Malik's name was announced. At home, Malik's relationship with his father grew even stronger. They spent evenings brainstorming new superhero ideas, drawing together at the kitchen table. "What if this one has a shield that reflects kindness?" Malik suggested one night. Darnell smiled. "I think that's perfect." One evening, after Malik had gone to bed, Darnell sat on the porch, reflecting on the past few months. The struggle had been tough, but it had also been a reminder of the power of resilience and the importance of empathy. In his heart, Darnell knew that teaching Malik to stand tall despite his challenges was one of the greatest lessons he could give as a father. But equally important was teaching the world to see Malik for who he truly was, a boy with a heart full of courage, not a victim to be pitied. A few weeks later, the Johnsons hosted a small gathering at their apartment, inviting neighbors and school families. It was a celebration of community and growth. Mrs. Rivera brought her famous empanadas, and Sophia showed Malik how to make a friendship bracelet. Even Jake and Ethan stopped by with their parents, nervously handing Malik a card they had made. Inside, it read, "We're sorry for what we did. You're pretty awesome, and we're glad you're our friend." Malik smiled as he read it, looking up at Jake. "Thanks, and I forgive you." The moment was simple yet profound, symbolizing the power of forgiveness and the beginning of a new chapter. The evening ended with Malik and Darnell sitting on the couch, watching the sunset through their living room window. Malik leaned his head against his father's arm. "Dad," he asked softly. "Yeah, buddy? I think you're my superhero," Malik said, smiling. Darnell chuckled, wrapping an arm around his son. "Nah, Malik, you're the superhero. I'm just lucky to be your sidekick." As the last rays of sunlight bathed the room in gold, their bond felt stronger than ever, a symbol of hope, unity, and the power of love to overcome even the darkest challenges. Bullying affects countless children every day, but together, we can make a difference. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and thought-provoking stories. Let's work together to spread kindness, empathy, and understanding, because every child deserves to feel safe and valued.